Since 2003, this is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
The Sports Source is presented by Junk Be Gone, Pipe Wrench, and the Garza Law Firm.
The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios for the Sports Source. We have a full show for you today. Tennessee gets back on the winning ways last night. They split for the week, and I seem to remember someone last week. Oh, yeah, it was this show where we said, loss at Florida, win at Texas. Well, that's what happened. We'll break that down, how it happened. We'll take a look at Chaz Lanier, some interesting numbers regarding his play at home versus on the road. We'll also talk about NIL, lots of Tennessee portal coverage, and there's not a lot to cover, but we do a lot of coverage on what's not happening over there and why it's not happening and why it shouldn't be panic mode. Or should it? That's the kind of show we're going to have. We don't even know what we're doing. We'll also be talking about a big injury at Auburn that could impact the SEC title race. How much does that help Tennessee? Hate to look at it that way, but it is what it is. And we'll also talk about changes coming to the Vol Network broadcast booth that I'm sure you're aware of. Lots to come today. Let's get into it. First segment of our show brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. And folks, it may be a new year, but the same truths carry over every year from 24 to 2025. If you need an attorney, make sure it's a local attorney. And when you need a local attorney, turn to the team with the best track record around. That's Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. Visit garzalaw.com to learn more about the Garza Law Firm. We appreciate them for bringing you this show each and every week, as we say about all our sponsors. Let's welcome in the first wave of panelists. We have a couple more waiting in the wings, but right over here, Chuck Cavaleris. Chuck, thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
Josh Ward right here. Josh, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Former Vol assistant coach, former D1 basketball player, Mark Pancrat's back with us. Mark, thanks for always blessing us with your basketball knowledge. Will West, thanks for just being here and blessing us with your knowledge. Good to have you back. All right. After one of the worst shooting nights in basketball history at Florida, I mean, that was the number of records that kept coming out of that one. It was the first time somebody hadn't hit this many shots since 1886. You know, it's like, good grief. Terrible night. Tennessee gets back on the right foot last night at Texas. They win 74-70. No doubt leaving Texas fans to wonder why it is again they got rid of Rick Barnes a few years ago. Boy, you look at those programs and what they've done since that switch. Yeah. It has been a night and day difference for Tennessee and at Texas because they are not what they used to be. That said, Mark Pancrat, start us off. Biggest takeaway from last night's game.
To me, it was the willingness of this coaching staff to continue to make adjustments. You saw them go almost in a 1-4 low after they would high ball screen Zakai down the stretch the last kind of 10 minutes, and they didn't really have an answer for it. Zakai was able to get to penetration. What these teams are doing, which we'll get into Chaz and some of the other things, is they're filling the gaps on Chaz and Zakai. So as soon as Zakai passes it, they're jumping in that gap. Well, if Chaz sets that ball screen, they get the switch, and now Zakai can go downhill. So they were adjusted there. We'll talk about Stone. I mean, the willingness to adapt. I mean, Igor was the player of the game a week ago, right, and he got him on the bench the last 10 minutes because of other guys stepping up. And so a lot of coaches, they're headstrong in the way that they do things, especially to somebody that's had the success of Barnes. And this staff continues to be willing to make adjustments in game, and they've led to wins.
It's interesting, too, because his first few years here, I would have argued Rick Barnes is one of those guys who does what Rick Barnes does. It's only the last 2 or 3 years where I've seen this total reinvention. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Am I the only one that's recalling it that way? Because it seems like the first few years, it's like, well, Barnes is just going to sit and man to man. Well, Barnes is just going to do this. Now, as Mark points out, it looks like this is a team that has a lot more ways to attack you, to defend you, and he's willing to take advantage of them all.
Well, he only has so many guys, but he hasn't abandoned guys either. Because to this point in the season, Mark mentioned his name, but Darlin Stone-Dubar, he had not inspired a lot of confidence with how things had gone and dealt with off-court stuff. He was back with the team, but they needed somebody to step up. He was given that opportunity. He made plays. He stepped up. And it's not just, okay, well, if Chaz has a big game, we're going to win. If he doesn't, we're not. And they had to do that rallying in the second half. It was close, but they had to rally on the road to get that.
Yeah, I mean, what was 3 of 5 from threes? He had that big dunk on a Gainey miss. And a lot of his points came when Tennessee trailed. I mean, they were down by a bucket, and he's hitting a shot that certainly keeps you in the game. I mean, you trailed 56-52 with 7.5 minutes to go and outscored them 14-4, and you're not forcing turnovers, really. I think Texas only had 5 or 6, and you're not getting anything out of your transition game. So it was really players making plays and Texas not making adjustments.
Zakai Zeigler at the end of the game made a heck of a play, too, because it looked like, okay, here's where he's going to have to chuck up a long three, and instead drives past his man, blows to the back, it hits the bucket. Tennessee comes down on defense. They force Texas to take one of those desperation, chuck it up from 3. That was huge. Right under a minute to go. It was a huge difference in that game. Let's go ahead and put up the shot charts from last night if we could. They look a lot better than they did at Florida the other night. You see Tennessee in the red hitting from outside yesterday. Will, thoughts on the game last night, takeaways?
It was incredible to see Dubar be able to play like that, especially in limited action, right? To give you 12 points in 17 minutes is incredible. Think about, he was expected to step in and maybe Chaz is 1A, he's 1B, and then he deals with some family tragedies and off-the-court issues, and then I think it's been a struggle for him to get back into the swing of things and into a rhythm. That guy is a game changer, though, for Tennessee, because it's a very shallow bench to begin with. But now you add another guy that averaged 18 points a game last year to this team that can hit from outside, that can drive the lane, that can play tough defense on the perimeter. I mean, that's massive. He's an all-SEC caliber player that you haven't gotten a lot out of yet, that now if you could really get him going, and maybe don't feed him too much right now, this is a game changer for a Tennessee team that's already been the number one team in the nation for weeks. Now you add a guy like that to the rotation, that could be incredible.
Yeah. Well, and Akbar, I mean, he's the other guy inside. Being able to block shots on the inside, his ball screen, had a big offensive rebound last night. We continued. What we learned from that Florida game is that we can't let up. We got exposed. Yes, we talk about the shot charts, but we got out toughed in Florida. And last night, when you go against a Texas team that's 0-2 in the league, they got a home team, number 1 in the country by the ranking standpoint, coming into your place. That was a beehive to be able to pull out that win, and a lot of our toughness showed.
Well, Chuck brought up something that's, if you showed me many nights where Tennessee turns it over 15 times, the other team turns it over 5, I'm going to think Tennessee usually loses on that night.
Exactly.
For them to get the win like that on the road, impressive. Let me show you something about Chaz Lanier. He scored 10 points each of the last 2 games, but if we can get his last 10 games up, actually I need the next graphic if we could, the one that says Lanier's last 10 games. There we go. All right, starting with Tennessee Martin going forward, I was just looking at these numbers, and I thought this was interesting. His lowest field goal percentage, his 3 lowest field goal percentage, have been in the 3 games in red there, all true road games. His 3 lows for made threes, all in the road games, and his 3 lows for points, all in the 3 road games. That's a small sample size, but still interesting that you're seeing. And I went back to look because he didn't take as many shots last night. That was not the case at Illinois and Florida. It wasn't the lack of shots. It was just he wasn't performing as well. Mark, is there anything to that, or am I just trying to dig to find something?
Well, I think we're learning how to play with what the defenses are now doing against our team is where they're really gapping. As soon as Zakai passes that ball, they're jumping to the ball. As soon as Meshack passes that ball, they're jumping in that gap to shrink the hole that Chaz has to score. I mean, the other side, we've talked about the relationship between Dalton Connect and Chaz Lanier, the success they have. What's interesting, if you look from December 5th of last year with Dalton Connect scoring to January 6th of last year, so a month time frame, in those 10 games, he averaged 9.8 per game.
He twisted his ankle, if I recall correctly.
Against North Carolina.
Yeah, and then it took him a while to get back into the rhythm that he was at early in the year.
Yeah, so there's some lulls in there. It's going to happen to all the teams. I'm interested to see how we continue. Again, I keep going back, whether it's Stone, whether it's Meshack, Gainey, we got to have all those guys with consistency, because as a coaching staff, one thing you love is consistency. If you don't know night in, night out, and you got to wait a full half till you figure out who's got it tonight, against these good teams, it snowballs like what happened against Florida.
I had that same conversation with Bob Hodge, who'll be out here later this week. It was like, well, okay, remember Dalton Connect. We were discussing Dalton Connect went through the same kind of thing. That's why I was actually pulling these numbers. I was preparing to show, it's 2 games, it's random. Then I noticed that Illinois thing. Then I noticed road game.
Those are also the best 3 teams that Tennessee's played against as well, and you're on the road as part of it. And I do think that he was going to regress to the mean a little bit, especially with his outside shooting. he's not going to finish the season shooting 44% beyond the arc, right?
What?
So it's at some point in time you knew he was going to regress to the mean, and maybe against better teams and on the road, because the Miami game was at a neutral site, shot 53%. So I don't know if it's not just being at the friendly confines as much as playing a good team at their house ends up being a problem.
I think it could be. I mean, Tennessee had more fans at that neutral. I was there, so there was more Tennessee crowd there. That was like a home game. So just wanted to put out there.
And
We'll
with
see how
Lanier,
it develops.
Isn't it being more aggressive too?
Yes.
Taking more shots, isn't that what it comes back to?
Well, I mean, that's,
and the
Barnes
pass
took him out
right?
last
The wild
night.
pass, 11 seconds into the second half, he's back over on the bench.
Barnes said that was supposed to be Lanier taking that shot.
Yeah. So
And
I
what
mean,
was his
that's
comment after the game?
Yeah.
Rick Barnes finished the press conference saying, and we told Chaz that's what you're being paid to do, is take that shot. And he laughed as no animosity when he said it, but it is also true. That's what Chaz Lanier is being paid to do, is take and hit those big shots.
All right. Very good. You want to close out? Are you good? Okay. When we come back, the best player in the SEC, heck, the best player in the country, Johni Broome, looks like a significant ankle injury is what Bruce Pearl called it last night. So if Auburn doesn't have Broome, what does that do to the SEC title race? Does that help Tennessee's cause? We'll discuss all that. Then we're going to get into a preview. We'll scout Georgia and Vanderbilt for you. Then we'll get into a whole lot of NIL portal talk, Tennessee recruiting, all that. Coming back on the Sports Source. Come on back and join us. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. Masonry, roofing supplies, Nudura concrete forms, culture stone. Boy, if you need any kind of building material in the world, they've got it at A.G. Hines Company. Plus, they've got hundreds of the top vendors in the nation that they can supply you with. A.G. Hines Company, they are the best place. So if you've got a home improvement project you're about to do, if you're about to start a bigger project, get down there and see Gordon, Jacob, Anna, and Alex this week at A.G. Hines Company. All right. I want to put up the poll question for today. There we go. Very simple. You got Ohio State and Notre Dame in the playoff final, and I just wondered, how are you going to handle the playoff title game? SEC fans, Tennessee fans, what's a good Southern person supposed to do? Your options: go Ohio State, go Notre Dame, or go watch something else. And it looks like right now Notre Dame is in the lead, which is kind of where I'm going. We'll discuss that a little later, but I'm surprised there aren't as many go watch something else. Everybody's going to be watching it, but it looks like Notre Dame's in the lead right now. Earlier today, the people who are playing it, you can go to our website, sportsource.tv, play it there. You can also use your QR code with your phone right there, click it on the QR code, and play along. But earlier when I got in here, the lead was much, much smaller for Notre Dame, but it's going to blossoming here. It's blooming this morning. So tell us what you're going to be doing when they play that title game. All right, as I mentioned, Johni Broome, whose name I screw up. I'm terrible with names. I apologize. You know, I'm lucky I get these.
You go by like JB.
Yeah, that's why I'm lucky that I get these guys' names right. Isn't that right, Stark? So Johni Broome hurt yesterday. You saw it, texted me. They had to carry him off because he'd hurt his ankle. After the game, Bruce Pearl said significant ankle injury is what it looks like. Obviously, they've got an MRI scheduled, and we'll find out more, but it didn't look good. So if you've got a player of his caliber, best in the SEC, best in the nation, you can make the case. You can be a good team, but that's a heck of a hole in your roster if he's not there. How much does that impact Auburn as probably the SEC favorite right now? Does that bring them back to the rest of the pack?
Well, it most definitely does, but we also have a history of Coach Pearl of when his teams are backs against the wall, they lose players.
New Year's Day a few years ago,
Sometimes that's when they rise up. So it'll bring them back to the pack a little bit. What you saw across the SEC last night with Alabama getting a big-time win, even Georgia that's coming here Wednesday, the league is loaded, but I just think that loss will bring it even closer, harder, tight race.
Let me go ahead and put some numbers up here on the screen for everybody, just so I'll give this to Chuck and Josh. They can look at them. You've got the Ken Pomeroy rankings as of last night. Auburn number 1, Florida number 5, Tennessee 6, Alabama, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Ole Miss, all in the top 25. There you have the last AP top 25, and that's from last Monday, so obviously that's going to change after Tennessee lost. But you see 9 teams, including Oklahoma, in the top 25 when it comes to the human vote. And then you have the standings after last night. So you've got 3 complete games. You've gone through 3 rounds of the SEC's round robin. And you see Auburn, Alabama, Ole Miss all there at 3-0. And then the rest of those teams are 2-1 there below it. Josh and Chuck, who do you like in terms of winning the SEC now? If Broome's going to be out for a while, you still put Auburn in that mix, or you take them out of it? What does that do for Tennessee? Josh, I'll start with you.
Well, it helps Tennessee a lot because Tennessee has to go to Auburn, and it's still going to be a really tough game.
Yeah.
But if they go there in a couple of weeks and they don't have Broome, that helps Tennessee a lot because of his position, how good he is. That was going to be a matchup problem, I think, for Tennessee. I think Alabama's really good. We just saw what Florida could do against Tennessee. That was at home. Tennessee will get them in Knoxville. But, I mean, I think there are 4 or 5, maybe 6 teams that have a legitimate case to feel good about their chance to win the SEC. It helps Tennessee. I would probably lean toward Alabama, Florida, Tennessee in that conversation. Kentucky, though, winning at Mississippi State, we can't count out the Wildcats either.
Yeah, and that injury, John, that's how I broke my ankle. The same kind of way. He actually landed on a teammate's shoe and couldn't get up and had to call for other people. So I think at the very least you're looking at a high ankle sprain. I think Auburn would take that right now.
Yeah.
I think who I would look at now, I mean, who beat Tennessee by 30? That's the team that's got my attention. I'd go ahead and circle February 1st. That's when Florida comes here. But I think they're the most talented team I've seen.
Hey, John, I'm not a betting person, but I would have bet that we would not had a comparison of Broome to Chuck. Coming on the show today, like,
or if you told me it was coming, it would be made by Chuck. That would have been the safe bet. That would have been the safe bet.
But I do think when you look at the league last night, and we're snowed in, so I'm watching more SEC basketball. There's a lot of points being scored in this league, 80, 90, 100 points at times. And sometimes I look at that Tennessee team, I'm like, man, like where are we going to consistently, night in and night out, get 80 to 85 points? Because that's what's going to take a lot to win on the road. And what we saw at Alabama, can it snowball where a lot of teams, they get hot a certain night and they're scoring 85. Our defense is really good, and we'll bring them back to the pack a little bit. But when you look at this team for Tennessee, you got to be wondering, where are we going to consistently get 85 points against high caliber talent?
Well, and it's such a thin team in terms of the numbers of guys that are out there. You would look at it and say, okay, you can survive if Lanier doesn't have a great night. You can survive if Milicic doesn't have a good night. You can survive if one of those guys takes a back seat. They won a game last night with Milicic and Lanier being down. They combined for 17 points. All right. When they have 2 of those guys off, it's going to be really rough on this team.
Right.
I mean, you can do without one, but you can't have a night where 2 of those guys aren't scoring.
And I thought Gainey was playing better there for a while, but he was only hitting, 26% on threes now?
Yeah, he scored some volume points last night.
Ziegler was down to like 29%. Meshack's in a slump. So, Mark, I mean, you're right. I thought the same thing. When you go down this lineup, you've got players either hurting or slumping or something that they're going to have to snap out of that.
Yeah, Kentucky brought in shooters and scorers. They're going to put up a lot of points. They put up 106 against Florida. When Tennessee plays Kentucky, that'll be a real test at what Tennessee can do offensively.
All right, very good. When we come back, let's preview the Vols' next 2 games. Mark mentioned that Georgia's coming in next. Then the Tennessee goes to Vanderbilt next Saturday night. What kind of challenge can those teams provide for the Volunteers? And this is a week where Tennessee gets a sweep. We'll discuss that. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by River Cove Campground. If you're wanting to take your family on a camping adventure that they're never going to forget, or an RV excursion this time of year that they're never going to forget, book a spot now at Uncle Jim's River Cove Campground. Smoky Mountain views, sites along the west prong of the Little Pigeon River, premium RV hookups, and an endless list of amenities. Visit their website today, rivercovecampground.com. Okay, I've already mentioned it. Let's just get right into it. Georgia visits on Wednesday. Mark, the Bulldogs are 14-2, but a lot of that's your preseason schedule, and some of these teams don't schedule anybody but the Sisters of Mercy. So Georgia 14-2 overall, 2-1 in the SEC though, with a loss to Ole Miss and then back-to-back wins against Kentucky and Oklahoma this past week. They're coming to Food City Center, Thompson Bowling Arena, whatever you want to call it. What kind of chances that Georgia can give Tennessee a pretty good game here in Knoxville?
I think the other thing, when we're looking at those conference rankings, you got to be looking at home and away, right? Yep. So they did beat Oklahoma, they did beat Kentucky. Both of those games were at home. Mm-hmm. So this is a true road test for them coming to Thompson Bowling Arena. And look, they don't shoot it well either. We talked about our team struggling from the perimeter. Georgia doesn't shoot it well. And then their assist-to-turnover ratio is poor. Damari Jr. is a really good leader for them at the guard position, but they don't take care of the ball. And if you don't take care of the ball on the road against a defense like Tennessee, it could get ugly pretty quick. But the one thing that Florida did to us that Georgia could do as well is they can beat you up inside. They got two big guys, 6'10", 6'11", that can really rebound, can get the ball inside, and finish and score. So we'll have to show up down low.
It'll be interesting to see if they can do that here, though. I mean, the fact that Tennessee, I don't know that Florida's going to be able to do that here. You walked into a buzzsaw down there, and as Tyler Ivins pointed out on our show last week, that's the one place where Rick Barnes' teams have gone to die. They go to Florida and they get blown out. But that's one thing to watch. You're going to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, look, Georgia has a 6'11" freshman that can knock it down from outside. He doesn't always shoot. It's weird. Like one game 40% beyond the arc, the next game 0 attempts beyond the arc. They've also beaten 3 ranked teams, Georgia has. Tennessee hasn't yet on the season. So there's that, but I do wonder, that Ole Miss game, very reminiscent of Tennessee against Florida, where I think they were 2 of 18 beyond the arc, Georgia was. So I do think road games are a little tough for them, especially they don't shoot particularly well on the road.
Vanderbilt, another one. Basically, if you look at anybody at the SEC right now, they're going to have a good record. Vanderbilt, 13-3 overall, but 1-2 in the league. Losers of their last 2 games to Mississippi State and to Missouri. What's the challenge there, Mark?
They did lose at Missouri. When you look across the league and you look at the talent level, I mean, Vanderbilt is just not there compared to a lot of the SEC. So I don't think they have the inside. Now, they'll defend. They're going to get in gap and make it really difficult on Zakai to be able to penetrate and pitch. You saw that late last night. They're not helping off of Zakai's penetration. They're making him finish at the rim. Vanderbilt will absolutely do that. But this is a week that we should come away getting 2 wins.
I agree. It should be 2-0, but also I think that both of these wins actually will look pretty good for the tournament resume. Vanderbilt's beaten a lot of like mid-level power conference teams in the non-conference schedule, so I think it's one that's going to kind of help Tennessee's resume, but I think they're going to win.
Playing over there in that weird setup that they already had for years, it used to be more of a concern whenever Tennessee would go over there. Under Rick Barnes, it hasn't been that kind of a – and part of that is they've dropped off considerably there at the end of Kevin Stallings and after. But there was a time when going to Vanderbilt, it didn't matter how good Vanderbilt was, that was always going to be a test because of that building, because of the way they got into it. Barnes seems to have killed off a little bit of that. It's not so much, oh gosh, we're having to go over there to Memorial like that. You don't have that fear. I'm not saying you're not going to go over there and choke on Saturday, but that hasn't been as big of a storyline the last few years as it was the previous, say, 20, even when Bruce Pearl was here.
I think you hit on one of the talent level of Vanderbilt hasn't been there. But then, too, one thing that they did adjust is the coaches used to only be able to stay on the baseline. Now you can come up just as though you're the coach's box, up the sideline, so you can relay a message to your team at the other end of the court from a closer range than what you could 15 years ago.
And you feel that makes a big impact.
Yeah, because you're trying to get a play call, you're trying to get some adjustment. Hey, there's 10 seconds left on the shot clock. That half of a court is a big difference.
There you go. Very good. Mark Pankratz, thanks for being in here. I appreciate it. Your insights are always great. When we come back, Ryan Callahan and Bob Hodge join us as we dive into Tennessee football recruiting. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Boy, they take care of your house no matter what your problem is. Whether it's, we're right around the corner from spring. It's amazing. I can't believe we're halfway through January already. It feels like we should be just now getting to Thanksgiving, and we've just zipped past it. So before you know it, you're going to be talking about carpenter bees. You're going to be talking about termites. You're going to be talking about bed bugs, mosquitoes, stink bugs, ladybugs, all that. Get year-round protection. Call the group I use, Southeast Termite and Pest Control. SoutheastTermite.com is where you can learn more. Great family-owned business. Give them a shout this week. All right, let's welcome in the next 2 members of our panel right here. Ryan Callahan from GoVols 24/7, and right there, Bob Hodge from the Sports Source.
From the Sports Source.
From that chair, Bob Hodge.
Exactly. For this long, yes, from the Sports Source. I like that.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Ryan, the Vols got a commitment yesterday. Who was he? Who did they beat to get him?
Yeah, beat out a number of good programs for an in-state offensive lineman. Gabriel Osenda, originally from Canada, went to a school in Florida and then transferred to Baylor School in Chattanooga back in the summer. So he's not a born and bred Tennessee kid, but still one that's in-state and became more important to Tennessee after he got to Chattanooga. So big pickup there, beating out. He's got more than 25 offers already. He's 6'7", 330 pounds. So a big kid who moves very well. Only spent a couple years on the offensive line so far, former defensive lineman. I think you like that kind of profile. So good athlete, a lot of upside there. And and already a good player, showed well this week. He announced his decision at the Navy All-American Bowl in San Antonio. Had a good showing in an all-star setting this week, so I think a nice pickup there for Tennessee in-state.
I saw some grumbles that, well, he's only a 3-star. Sounds like you're 6'7", probably going to wind up a 4-star.
Well, we'll see, but I'll say
It's
this.
usually what happens when you sign with the SEC team, you jump.
Yeah.
Very real possibility, but I'll say this. We haven't even had a round of postseason rankings updates yet. So let's see. Our analysts haven't gone back and seen what they think of a guy after his junior season. They've obviously got a chance now to base an evaluation on what they saw in San Antonio this week. So I think there's multiple opportunities for him to move up in the coming months, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if that happens.
And not to mention the fact that, as we've said on this show for years, the rating, I've always said it's a compass. It's not a GPS. And that's especially true when you're talking about one player. If you show me, well, this guy's a 3-star, that really doesn't tell me a ton. If you show me Tennessee has signed 25 3-stars and 2 4-stars, then I'll point to, well, there's an issue.
Yeah.
Because in the whole, you're just getting this 3-star talent. But
And
as
I
one
think
guy,
you also
who
look
knows?
at who they beat out.
Yeah. So,
Florida was the runner-up in this case. South Carolina and Minnesota, Minnesota being close to Canada, I think that was the outlier there.
so they're still not beating out Ohio State and Bama and Georgia.
Georgia and Ohio State had both offered in November, so good offer list, beating out good talent, or good competition.
Darn it! I wanted to be mean. I couldn't be. All right. Then let me ask you this. That's great. That's well and good. Fans are still freaking out. Where's the portal news? Portal. Where are the portal people?
They did get one this week.
Go ahead and talk about him. Amari
Jefferson. So I think a really good pickup here, and kind of almost under the radar for what he was coming out of high school.
Because he didn't play last year.
Yeah, a top 247 prospect, 4-star, coming out of high school, and Tennessee just recruited him a little more than a year ago, lost out to Alabama. He goes to Alabama to play for Nick Saban, though, and now he's not playing for Nick Saban. He gets to sit out this year, didn't have a chance to play, and then suffers a little hip injury that required a surgery that he should be back from that in time for spring practice, but still something he had to deal with. So just not the first year he envisioned, doesn't feel the fit there anymore, decides he wants to go back home. So I think a nice pickup there for Tennessee, though, considering the need at wide receiver and considering what his upside is, because that's a high-level potential guy that they viewed as a top target just a little more than a year ago. So that's, I think, a nice pickup and kind of a way to, in their mind, maybe right or wrong from the past where you missed out on an in-state kid that you really liked.
Okay, well, I'm playing the role of Vol fan on social media today. Okay, so when I say portal, what I mean is a lot of these folks are looking at it and they see, let's see, 13, 14, 15.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people going, and who's coming in? 1 and 2 and
Yeah.
where is everybody? It's the John Travolta meme. Where is everybody? You've got 2 coming in.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch leaving. People apparently assume that when you have this many leave, you're going to have that many come in. That is not going to be the case with Tennessee. We talked about it a little last week. But what I want to talk about is roster crunch, okay? Now, talk to me about this roster, because one thing I've gotten a lot of is, I don't want to hear about your scholarship reductions. They still have those. Talk about that. First, explain that.
Yeah, so not substantial, but it is something you're dealing with. You're down 2, maybe 3 scholarships. It's up to Tennessee, really, how they decide to handle it, but they've got to be down at least 2 each year during the probationary period. So they've still got to deal with that. So they're looking at 82, 83 scholarships. Again, not a huge hindrance, but when you are bringing in this recruiting class of 25, that's a big deal. So they didn't have a huge senior class. You had some transfers leave, but not an excessive amount by the national standard. You're seeing USC and some of these other programs lose 20-plus players to the portal. Tennessee's had in the teens, I believe, is the total now, but not quite as many as some other programs. So when you combine that with the senior class, not as much space. Now, that's not to say that's why Tennessee only has 2 transfer portal additions. They could have more, but they're not looking at a huge number of open spots on the roster right now.
I'm getting a lot of people that say, well, just put them. We talked about this yesterday on the phone. A lot of people are saying, hey, just you don't have to give them scholarships anymore. You got NIL dollars.
Yeah.
Just tell them you're a walk-on, but here's $500,000, be happy. That's not really feasible in your view.
Easier said than done. You got to have the right player to be able to pull off the non-scholarship thing. You can do that, but at the end of the day, most kids are going to say, well, I can go here and be on scholarship. Why am I going to take that? Someone else can be not on scholarship. Why does it have to be me? So at the end of the day, I don't hear that conversation come up as much as people might think, because it's a status thing. You don't want to be seen as a non-scholarship player in most cases. It takes the right, Deshaun Bishop started his career as a preferred walk-on. That's a different situation. Out of high school, he was going to go to Coastal Carolina and then ended up at Tennessee. So you got to have the right player for that.
Well, and you're certainly not going to see it on a transfer portal.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring a kid in and not give him a scholarship.
For a guy who has an option to go to another SEC school, especially.
Okay, there we go. So we knocked out all the information I wanted to get out there. Now I'm just going to open it up for discussion. Any questions for Ryan from Josh or from Bob? Or do you guys have any opinions on the people that are kind of clamoring for more portal news?
Well, I think offensive line is still a position to try to target, and I think Tennessee's going after that. But what do you think there in terms of trying to build up front? Because wide receivers gotten so much attention, protecting and blocking up front is still a big deal.
Yeah,
and you tried to get a kid from Northwestern, and that didn't go through.
Yeah, Josh Thompson, they were pretty close on him. LSU comes in, makes a big push, and lands him, so you miss out on him. But they've gone after another one.
Push.
Gone after another one this week, hosted Emmanuel Pregnon, the USC transfer, former Wyoming transfer, second team All Big Ten player, so a really high profile addition. He's currently a top 10 player for 24/7 Sports among all transfer portal players for this cycle. So that would be a big deal. He was just on campus a couple days ago. Texas this weekend. We'll see if another visit after that. But definitely someone Tennessee would love to add. So they're still looking for guard help and definitely want another interior lineman if they can find the right one. The key is if you don't get Pregnon, who's left after that? The portal's starting to wind down. Even though the portal closed a couple weeks ago, you can still enter if your team just ended their season. So there's still maybe more opportunities out there. Wide receiver, and I would say running back is still another position they'd like to add at least one more body. But as far as the number of guys they're going to add, I don't know that it's going to be 7 or 8 this cycle. We'll see what they get to, but I think it's going to probably be closer to 5 or so.
I started to say, it sounds like there's just 1 or 2 more portal that can come in. It would be a surprise to me. Now, you cover it a lot. You cover it. I don't. I haven't heard enough talk there to think that there's going to be 3 or 4 more coming in. Well, I just hear the couple of positions. So you think it could be as many as what?
It depends on, because I think some of this may carry over into the spring. Are they going to get a defensive lineman? Defensive line would be another position they maybe could add one. Are they going to get all that done before the end of the winter period? So I think there's a chance this goes over into the spring. And by that time, you could have more guys who enter the transfer portal from Tennessee's roster. The headache's not over for Tennessee just yet. You've got to worry about this again in April. So there's maybe a chance for some others to leave that could open the door for a couple more additions.
Or you can look forward to it again in April if you're really wanting to get guys.
Right.
I thought the interesting thing was what you just said about guys, they want to be scholarship players.
Yeah.
If I was a kid and somebody said, you can be a millionaire without a scholarship, or you can have a scholarship, I'll take the million. I just wonder if that attitude might change, because if the money's close, okay, I get it. But, okay, you're going to have to pay your own way to school, but we're going to give you an extra $100,000 to do it.
Yeah.
I just wonder if that attitude
a little bit more than what I got for books.
Yeah.
Also easier said than done, though, because who wants to give away $100,000 that could get you another pretty good player in a lot of cases? I mean, that's the flip side, is that money still has real value on the NIL market to go get somebody else. So you're trying to save every dollar you can to use on the next guy.
Well, you're trying to spend every dollar you can and save every dollar you can.
Yeah.
Sounds like the way I budget.
That's a perfect lead in to our next segment. We're going to be talking about NIL for the next couple of segments here. And when we come back, I want to talk specifically about the way Lane Kiffin builds his roster and the way Josh Heupel builds his roster. There are advantages you can find for both. Let's talk about what those are. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back in to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. Boy, they've got a huge selection of new and pre-owned boats down there. Get down there ASAP, though, if you want to pick from the widest selection of boats, because it's almost boat show season, which means they've got boat show pricing going on already. So you can get down there and get great deals on all the many different types of boats they have, but everybody else is doing the same. So if you want the pick of the litter, get down there now while the litter is large at Madisonville Marine, madmarine.com to learn more. All right, let's remind folks of our poll question. Let's see where this thing has shot to. If it's still, Ohio State's gotten a few more clicks since the last time we showed you. Keep clicking that thing. Let us know what you're going to be thinking as you watch the finals. Those northern teams up there. How can you pull for them Yankees? But let us know which team you're pulling for. Yeah, I also think we went up a little bit, didn't we, on the I'll watch something else, if I recall correctly. Yeah. But let us know what you think. Okay, back with Will West, Ryan Callahan, Bob Hodge. Josh Heupel, as you guys know, we've talked about it for a while. We talked about it last week. He builds his team through the high school recruiting first, and they will dabble in the portal. They are not hardcore portal in this. They absolutely have to be. Then you look at Lane Kiffin. Mike Norvell at Florida State's another one who they are going hardcore portal rather than high school first, okay? There are advantages to both. I mean, you could make a case that the portal attempt is much riskier. I don't think Josh Heupel is going to have a 2-10 team the way that Florida State did this past year. I think when you build and you're throwing so many different people together for 1 year, and you don't know how it's going to mix, and you don't know what the chemistry is going to be, and you don't know who the leader is going to be, I think you got a much more volatile situation. So I think it's safer to do the high school route, and we've shown you the last couple of weeks how the other teams, these teams in the playoffs, most of them built recruiting first, and then they sprinkled in the real good transfers on top of it. But it's recruiting first. But we were talking yesterday, and you had an interesting point about an advantage that the Ole Misses of the world may have in terms of just on the cash flow when you go out and you're buying a bunch of guys this year. Explain that.
Yeah, so when you're going to the transfer portal, say you're bringing in a Walter Nolan type player. Well, you're bringing him in a year where he can go to the NFL draft the next year if he has a big year. So he can sort of cash in on that one big year at your school. Well, if that's the case, that money suddenly comes off the books after that next year, and you're able to go reinvest that right back in the portal. So Ole Miss's approach, I would describe as almost more of a Moneyball approach. It's a way of trying to be more efficient with probably less resources than in Ohio State. You're not able to spend quite as much money, so you go out there and say, we're going to put it in the transfer portal. That way we know most of our dollars are going onto the field at all times. You're not investing in a bunch of freshmen who aren't ready to play. You're investing in guys who are getting immediate production. So they're maybe maximizing in that sense, but you also have the flip side, which is every once in a while you might hit a DJ Uiagalelei who doesn't live up to expectations, and suddenly your team falls flat on its face, as you said. So there's, I think, more risk in the Ole Miss approach maybe, but it's also a more efficient way from their perspective of spending money because you're not wasting money on guys who are sitting on the bench.
And, Will, that's the thing. Tennessee's going to, it looks like Heupel is determined to bring in the young guys, build through recruiting, which I'm fine with. But a year like this year where you signed 25 kids, when are you going to start playing the young guys?
Yeah.
Because if you're not doing it that way, if you're going to spend money on them and you're not playing them, then it is what Ryan just said, it's wasting money. And that money could go to other people. And are those guys going to pull a Mike Matthews and say, I'm either gone or I need more money to stay? So go ahead.
Well, I was saying,
I'll get back to you with your answer in a second.
Well, I think that might be part of Tennessee's offseason approach. People are kind of wondering where's the transfer portals, where are the transfer portal additions. I think Tennessee's realizing we've got talent on the roster. It's time to play it. At wide receiver, even for instance, you've got Braylon Staley that you're excited about. You got Mike Matthews that obviously you almost lost at one point. You got Travis Smith coming in, Radarius Jackson, guys that you saw as top of the board players. Go play them. If you don't, we saw what almost happened with Mike Matthews. So I think that's part of maybe the adjustment Tennessee's making is not investing in the transfer portal when you have players ready to come in and make an impact.
But my one concern, though, is that you're paying players a lot of money to not do a thing, right? Arch Manning's making $3 million a year at Texas, and he can't throw the football yet. Nico this year was a slightly below average SEC quarterback. He was. And you paid him a lot of money. So when I put all of this together, I'm thinking, would you have been better off taking a guy from the transfer portal and letting some of these guys walk? The problem is you worry about culture, you worry about whether they're going to get along. Does it become Texas A&M 2 years ago where everybody's in the locker room comparing how much they're getting paid in NIL and it tears your locker room up? I also wonder if this cycle changed things. Last year Miami paid Cam Ward at $1.6 million. Just came out earlier this morning that Carson Beck's going to make over $3 million. So what you're paying in the transfer portal, it seems like is going not just up, but way up right now if you want to get those players and try to moneyball it like Ole Miss does.
Well, the crazy one that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and if you'd told me when NIL started, I think most fans would have accepted it if you're like, well, Texas just paid $4 million to get a quarterback from Alabama. No, that's not what happened. Duke paid $4 million to get a quarterback from Tulane.
Yes.
So, and Ryan, I want to get into this moving forward too.
I think that was $4 million over the life of the contract.
But he's got 2 years of eligibility.
Yeah. So it's $2 million a year.
Oh, I thought it was $8 million.
Yeah, because the reports were $4 million per year for 2 years, but that may not actually be the case.
I saw some confusion on that, so I'm not totally sure. I don't know personally the details on that.
We'll get into the dollars and if they're finding their way home in the next segment. But Bob, Will brought this up. We talked about it a little bit on radio on his show a few weeks ago. There is a choice to be made, and I don't know. I think I would still go with the young guy. You could either invest big money on a freshman hotshot quarterback, pay him for years where he may not be. You're hoping that he becomes worthy of the cash, where you're paying him. Like this year, you paid Nico big money. Last year, you paid him to sit. This past year, you paid him to be a first-year quarterback, and he looked like it. His numbers were very similar to Hendon Hooker's first year. Then you look at next year and you think, okay, now he's going to get there. You could do it that way. Or you could go out and say, we just got Will Howard from Kansas State and he's got us in the national championship game. Or you get the kid that Florida State brought in and I'm not even going to try and say DJ Uiagalelei. So which way do you go? I mean, it's a tough question.
I guess I'm a little old-fashioned. I would rather see you get guys and develop guys. But I think for that to really pay off and going into the future, are you really going to be able to do it? I think that's when you're going to have guys signed and you can't leave because your freshman year, you're an offensive lineman, you're going to be redshirted, you're going to spend all your time in the weight room getting ready to play, and then you'll play some as a sophomore, but then as a redshirt sophomore is when you start starting. The problem with that is the guys that want to play, but I would still invest my money in guys that I can develop into my system, and then you get into the culture questions. You know, what happened at Florida State, I think should be a red flag for everybody in the country, but also your point about Lane Kiffin. So if it comes down to those two things, managing your money year to year or developing for the longer term, I still think I'm going to develop, but in 2 years it may be proven, nope, sorry, doesn't work.
Let's come back and talk about how much players are going for and whether or not that market is becoming clear or if it's still just all over the place. Going back on the Sports Source, we'll discuss NIL, more of it. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Express Frame. If you're a sports fan like myself and a lot of guys on the set today, then I'm sure you have probably collected a lot of memorabilia over the years, stuff that has great value to you, and other people look at it and go, what the heck's that? Well, you can present it like art by getting it to Express Frame. They can frame it and they can protect it for you as well. Not only displaying it properly, but protecting it properly. They do a good job at Express Frame. When you see our Saturday set that we did this fall, when we're about to launch our YouTube stuff, our new programming there in a couple of weeks, you're going to see the sets there. Look at the walls. That's 99.9% Express Frame. They do great work. ExpressFrame.net. It's in the Commons Shopping Center right off Peters Road out in West Knoxville. All right. We talk a lot about the going rate for quarterbacks. We just did it in that last segment. And it was reported $8 million for 2 years for this kid from Tulane to Duke. Carson Beck, what did you say, $3 million?
$3 million today, it's reported.
You're getting more and more of these reports, and we were discussing off air, why is that? Is that the collective's trying to make a splash? Is that the representatives for these players trying to get other players to go with them? Probably a little bit of both. But in terms of what these prices are, it still seems, I would assume there's not just a going rate for a player. Your value, it's a little like a coach in the NFL. If you're the only coach and there's 5 openings, your value is more than if you're one of 15 coaches that are all viable and there aren't a bunch of openings. So the more you get people trying to fight for you, your value goes up. Mike Matthews this year at Tennessee, based on his numbers, I don't know that you would give him a ton of NIL if you had a loaded receiver room. But he was kind of going to be the last man leaving the lights on. So throw him more money, keep him. Your value changes. Is that the case, or are you starting to get a better idea of, no, outside linebackers are this, strong safeties are this, right guards are this, or is it still just very much?
I think it's all over the place still, but we do have, you do have a better sense now that I think we safely can say if you're a good player in the transfer portal, it's going to be somewhere in the 6 figures. In some rare cases, it's going to be 7 figures. Pretty rare.
6 figures is a big push. Would you say low 6 figures for some, or high? Is it mainly 500 and up?
If you're talking, and again, high school versus transfer portal can be different. If you're a good player in the transfer portal, it's probably closer to mid 6 figures in a lot of cases. So it just depends on, again, it also depends on how good. If you're really good, it's going to creep toward high 6 figures probably. So just
and
depends.
The position.
And the position. And who else is out there at your position. So there's so many factors. Which schools you rope in? Do you get Oregon, Texas, and Ohio State bidding against each other? Or are you mostly dealing with second-tier programs that don't have quite the money sitting around to go and make a big aggressive push? So it depends on so many factors, including the market and who else is out there.
You know, it's funny. The NFL's transparent. When you sign a free agent, you know pretty much what the contract is. This stuff to me is very confusing because
and the lack of transparency plays into the value too.
I mean, and I think you're going to have to come to a day. You're talking about public institutions. They're going to have to be transparent. I just think they're going to have to be, at some point, more transparent because I know a lot of people hate it when you say this. It's still a university.
What?
I know. That's exactly. I mean, that's where I got my degree. That's where you got your degree. I don't know about anybody else sitting here, but, you know, it's still a school. It's still a university. So I think you're going to have some sort of transparency. Because I think it'll just be fair to the people like me who buy season tickets.
But they don't care about the people like you. That's the thing. The other thing, they care about themselves, and they don't. The only way to do that is if these players become employees. then it'll be on the record.
Which I think that's the direction you need to go sooner
But
than
you know
later.
who's fighting that? The schools
Yeah.
don't
They don't
want
want to
that.
go with the TV money.
Yeah.
They
But-
don't want to split the TV money.
but if you
I don't
do-
find this interesting anymore as much as I do aggravating.
I-
It frustrates me.
I would just say also, I think the schools should have ran, not walked 2 years ago to be able to make them employees because
They
you would
should
have
have done
locked
20 years
down,
ago.
probably. You would have locked down a big time quarterback. Remember when we heard the kid from Wake Forest went to Notre Dame for $1 million? Cam Ward got offered $1 million. I'm like, what? $1 million for a college quarterback? Now it's $3 million for a college quarterback. So the number is going to only continue to go up until you make them employees and you lock them down into contracts. It's just going to continue to go up.
Josh, I'm going to point something out. I'm not throwing you under the bus because we all did it, but I remember we talked about this early on, and we said it's going to be the Wild West, and you said it's going to be kids on social media promoting a fast food chain, and I thought, yeah, he's probably right. We were all wrong. It went from 0 to 1 million in 60 seconds, and there's no sign of it slowing down. It continues to get crazier.
Yeah, if you told me that every athlete was going to be on a 1 year, not even a 1 year
Yeah,
contract, 'cause you can
transfer
transfer
portal.
in the middle of a season to another school, you can hop out. That to me is still what has changed everything. The money is a big deal, of course it is, but the ability to renegotiate nonstop is what has thrown this all over the place.
Yep.
In that conversation when we had that conversation years ago,
Right.
that was also before the collective stuff had
Yeah,
come out there. So
sure.
we're all thinking, oh, these kids are going to be cutting their own deals. It's not
Yeah.
going to be that.
Yeah.
And now, who saw the rise of the collective? Who saw the transfer portal being you can go anytime, anywhere?
Yeah.
It's
With the
a-
ability to transfer and play right away, though, this happens, I would say, frequently if we go across the board. Players will agree to a deal with their collective, and then something might change within their own roster, or they might hear from another school again, and they come back to the collective and say, actually, I need this now. So you can go back on your own agreement at the school you already are because you have the ability to transfer and play somewhere else. To the point of contracts and schools will be paying. Schools at some point are going to be paying here very soon. We're already starting to see some schools describe the percentage, but that doesn't mean name, image, likeness opportunities go away. So you still will have
On top of
your
it.
budget of what is spent on your roster. Football will get the most, but there's still the ability to negotiate and put together whatever you can in NIL, actual NIL, to then add on to what star athletes are able to make.
Which would still be off the record. If
Right.
that is a private contract between
Yeah.
a company
Correct.
and
That's
a
not
player.
coming through the university.
That's right. So,
Unless it's publicly traded, and then maybe you find out that way.
well, and the other thing is we're all looking at it thinking, okay, you could have a deal cut by the end of this year where you're going to be, what is it, the house? What's
Through the house
word?
settlement.
Settlement, yeah, settlement's the word I was looking for. I'm bad with names and words. Other than that, I'm great with language. But the house settlement could make it to where you know exactly how much you've got. Will, my problem with that is it's just going to take one player and one lawyer to come in and say, you're preventing my client
Right.
from making more money. And one judge is going to say, yep, you lose NCAA, and all this goes away. I don't see how the House settlement is going to hold. Even if it comes through, I don't see how it's going to hold for long.
It's not. It's a salary cap without a contract. It's not collectively bargained. So the 17 states have already stepped in and said, we will sue you if this gets approved. So if this is what you try to implement. They're not going to try to implement this. I think this will be the revenue sharing piece. And then, like Josh said, you'll have the NIL piece on top of that, where the school still pays another $20 million to football players on top of the $22 million that they're having to lay out. I think they'll use this to pay women's players so that they don't get sued for Title IX and things like that. And football, men's basketball probably come out of another pool.
And just to add to the complications, I think on top of the maybe the desire for rising costs, you've also got donor fatigue that's a real problem and concern. And at what point, I mean, these are not tax deductible donations to a private business essentially. How long can donors really keep this up, and will they want to? That's the other part of this we don't know.
We need your money because we're building a new facility. We need your money because we want to keep this coach. We need your money to go to these NIL players. It's a lot.
Yep.
It's a lot. Oh, and we need 10% on a ticket. There's a talent fee on top of your tickets now, too.
And also the frustration for a lot of people on top of this is, oh, we need your $2 million, but we're not going to tell you exactly how we're
What
spending
it's
it.
going for.
Remember the good old days when we talked about who the backup guard was going to be?
When
Do we have a center?
Here's one. This is fun. I always love being Mr. Negative. Here's a great one. And I didn't come up with this one. I just thought it was fun to discuss. When we come back, could Tennessee actually be so good that it's a bad thing in NIL? I love that. Come back. We'll tell you how I'm trying to make you mad. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety System. Isn't it about time you caught up with your neighbors? Almost everyone now has home automation. Their whole house is basically controlled by their smartphone or by their tablet. And that means lights, that means your heating and air, that means locks on the doors, that means sound systems. Safety Systems have been putting that in people's homes for years and years and years. Before it was cool, folks, safetysystems.com. Give VFL J.J. Surlis a call this week. All right, let's take a look at the poll results and see where this wound up. All right, we're going to tell you it kind of evened up a little bit there. So Notre Dame gets the win. Looked like it moved while we've been there. Notre Dame gets the win. Most of you out there are going to be pulling for the Irish. And then it looks like you're going to have people that just don't watch. And then it looks like pulling for Ohio State came in third. We'll give you our answers on that a little bit later. We are way over with that last segment, but I just want to be quick here, and I'll get Ryan's take and I'll get Chuck's take off this. We were chatting yesterday, and we were discussing the fact that could Tennessee possibly be at a disadvantage in terms of the football program because you're so good in so many programs right now.
Yeah.
You're having to focus on giving some NIL to a national championship baseball team, a basketball team that's in the Elite Eight, a women's basketball team that just had its first couple of losses of the year but has been going in the right direction, and you know they're going to try and support it. Whereas, Ryan, another school, they're probably not spending that much on all those different programs.
Yeah, not the combination. It's at least a challenge for Tennessee. I'm not saying the NIL figure is as huge for those other sports as it is for football,
Sure.
obviously, but it's something that they've got to deal with while this model is in place. And again, the model could change as early as this year. We're skeptical of that, but that's something to work around for sure. And as long as NIL is a factor, the fact that you do have to split it up a little bit, it's an extra challenge for Tennessee that maybe not every school has to deal with.
Well, Chuck, I mean, you look if Ohio State's roster this year is $20 million in football. Let's say Tennessee. Let's say Team X has $20 million, and Team X has one other sport that they really pay attention to. Whereas Tennessee, they got $20 million, but they're trying to divide it among. You got football, gets the vast majority, but just $500,000 to baseball, $500,000 to women's basketball, $500,000. It takes away more than it would at some other school. So what I'm asking you is, should Tennessee start losing in other programs to help football?
Not anytime soon, John. But I see what you're saying. I was sitting here thinking, how does an Ohio State basketball player feel? We're putting $20 million plus in football, and Ohio State basketball hadn't been that good the past few years.
So they feel like going somewhere else.
So they feel like, well,
Felix Okpara felt like coming to Tennessee.
And look, Danny White has said we're going to win championships in multiple sports. We're going to win national championships in multiple sports. Mm-hmm. So if that's your approach, then it's a results-oriented business. Go do it.
Yeah, well, that means where's your wallet, Chuck? Because they're going to be asking you to fund it.
Tennessee picked an interesting time to actually succeed at being an everything school.
That's right. Yeah, it could backfire. All right. When we come back, change is coming to the Vol Network broadcast booth. We've got one man retiring after 25 years. We've got another man returning after 27 years away. Come on back. We'll talk about Bob Kessling and Mike Keith next on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. Get your family back around the table, folks. Any table. Pool table, ping pong table, shuffleboard table, foosball table, air hockey table, pub table. At Games and Things, they have everything you need to entertain your friends and to create more family together time. Games and Things, because life should be fun, and folks, they have everything you need to make it fun. OurGameRoom.com to learn more, but check out their showroom. You'll walk in, you're going to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours. I guarantee you it's a fun showroom. All right, we really haven't had time to talk about Bob Kessling's retirement. Football season was going on when that announcement came out, and then by the time we get a chance to talk about it, his replacement has been named. So big week at UT. Bob Kessling did his last football game at Ohio State, and he's Ohio-born, so that was fitting for him to get the. I'm sure he wanted the Vols to win, but if you're going to close it out, he closed it where he was. His dad was a drum major, I believe, at Ohio State. So Bob Kessling, after 25 years, decides to hang it up, and Danny White decides to go and make a splash, and he brings back a guy who has been the Tennessee Titans voice for the last 27 years, Mike Keith. So thoughts, first of all, on Bob Kessling and the fact that you don't often see guys replace the legend. You don't want to be the guy that replaces the legend. And John Ward, about as legendary as you can get in this school. There aren't many schools where the broadcaster probably ranks up there among the greatest coaches, and here that's one of them. So for Bob Kessling to survive and thrive for 25 years doing that job, that's a hat-tip moment for Bob Kessling.
Oh, and I mean, and it doesn't seem like it was that long ago. When you sit there and you listen to the actual years of how long Bob was doing what he did and Mike was doing what he did, and you sit there and go, it just doesn't seem that long ago that John Ward was stepping away.
Yeah.
So that is a huge, huge amount of time. I think, doesn't that make him the longest tenured?
I think he's right behind Ward.
Is he right
I may
behind
be
Ward?
wrong. Yeah,
Okay.
I think Ward was 68 to 98, I believe. I could be
Okay,
wrong.
30. We're very close.
I think he
Yeah.
started in the 60s, and went to them, but it was close. Yes, a heck of a run. And then you bring back Mike Keith, who, of course, was here, would have been up for that job along with Bob Kessling had he not taken a Titans job right before the year Ward stepped down. And for Mike to get a chance to check that last box, I mean, he called a Super Bowl. He called one of the greatest NFL plays ever in the Music City Miracle. And now for him to get to come home where he always dreamed to get this job, kind of worked out well for everybody. But it's kind of a fairy tale moment for him to be able to check that final box and get back and close it out at UT.
Yeah, I think it's incredible that they kind of make that transition of two guys that have worked together. They've done a lot outside of their roles in the Vol Network with what Bob did on TV, on Jefferson Pilot, and again, the Vol Network. And then Mike, I grew up listening to him on Sports Talk in the afternoon. So that's how I first knew of Mike Heath. And then he goes on to do all the great things with the Titans. And then he gets to come home to be a part of what the Vol Network will do next. And it's kind of a transitioning time, right? Because we're in this digital age, so there will be more that is probably in that role. I think Mike will be a perfect fit for that. So I think it's great for all parties how the transition will take place.
And it's a pretty good time to be getting away from the Titans, right? I mean, for the past few years, that has not been like the kind of, the glamorous kind of, we got a chance to go to the Super Bowl.
They've been in a better position.
Yeah, they're going to win 2 or 3 games. They're going to be one of the most boring teams, and you're the play-by-play guy.
We can also look at it on the positive and say it's a great time to come to Tennessee.
Yeah, and I think Mike looked at that too. So he sees everything that's happening at the University of Tennessee. We talk about the leadership at UT, how it helps with the coaches and what they're building there. I think Mike's comments that he's made this past week about the broadcasting side as well back that up.
And I can remember when we were at the New Center, we were hearing about this young guy at the communications department, the broadcasting, when he was like a freshman or a sophomore. And John Ward thought the world of him because I did some interviews, with John, and he would say that. And he really, at some point, did need to come home again, I think. And there's even like on social media, John, there's this black and white photo. It's fall calls. It's a young Bob Kessling and an even younger Mike Keith. So, there you go.
Yeah, it's a good transition. It's a good one. I worked with Mike 30 years ago now on a television show that I produced, and I can honestly say, hardest working guy I've ever been around. Because he was doing sports talk at the same time, and then he'd come over and do the hour a night over, it was a WBIR side channel, and just the amount, and then he would go home and do recruiting news. The guy just worked his tail off, and he's always been that kind of a worker. So I know that Tennessee's getting something good there. Were you raising your hand to say something?
Just real quick, first time I ever did the radio with Mike, I remember Chuck Sentinel used to go on. When I listened to Mike, I always thought he had a stack of like the Tennessee football guides and all this stuff, because people would ask him questions across the widest range of sports, and he would answer them. And then when you go and you did the radio with him, no, he was just sitting there. I don't know as much about my own life as Mike did about sports. So there is that. I mean, think about it. They got Will and Tyler now compared to Mike.
Oh, we'll bring Will out here and let him respond to that. Like I said, it's a great salute to both those guys. For Bob for 25 years of doing that, and to Mike for coming back. When I worked with Mike, these people know it. I see so many people online, they're like, oh, Pennington loves himself. He loves that show. Mike hugged me with a nickname years ago, Happy, because I'm never happy after one of these shows. And I got to talk to him the other day, and he was like, Happy? How are you? So, it's a good thing. So congratulations to both those guys. Bob on 25 years given to the university, and Mike on the years to come that he's going to give to the university. Good transition there by Danny White, who once again goes out. If you've got a hole to fill, he goes out and makes a splash in filling it. Congratulations to all those people involved. When we come back, all right, how you can help the family of a Vol baseball player in need ties into the California wildfires. If you haven't heard about it, we'll show you how you can help them. And then we'll answer that question. Who are we pulling for, the Golden Domers or those Buckeyes? Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Paper Be Gone. Tax season is upon us, folks. That means there will be all kinds of documents and records and paperwork. And when you're ready to dispose of all the old stuff that you no longer need to hold on to, be smart. Call Paper Be Gone. They can protect your business like nobody else. They can protect you and your home like nobody else. And we all need extra protection these days because everybody's trying to get your data. They're trying to get your information, whether they're stealing it online or they're stealing the hard copy from a trash can that you didn't have shredded and destroyed in an environmentally friendly way. And I'm talking about the paper in the trash can. You wouldn't destroy the trash can. Paper Be Gone. See, I would destroy a trash can. Paper Be Gone knows how just to destroy your documents. PaperBeGone.com. Give them a shout this week. All right. We have seen awful fires in California. Obviously, it's just unbelievable, heartbreaking stories. And being the volunteer state, we know what we do around here. So I would encourage everybody to do what you can. If you got an extra couple of bucks, Red Cross, all the different groups that are trying to raise money for the California wildfires. But here's one specifically. Chris Stamos, who is a pitcher on the Tennessee baseball team, his mother and brother and he lost their home in the Eaton fire. I think the home is in Altadena. They were trying to raise $15,000 for temporary housing for the mother. And as you can see, it's already up to this morning, it's up to $60,000. But knowing what Tennessee fans do, I'm putting it on television and putting a call out here because temporary housing may be $60,000. What's coming in the future, we don't know what kind of difficulties they're going to have in trying to refurnish a place. And out there in California, there are a lot of these homes that you simply can't get insurance for anymore.
Right.
So, Vol fans, do what you do. GoFundMe. Chris Stamos, you see the note right there. Support the Stamos family recovering from the Eaton fire. We'll check that later and see how many donations go up from that, but we wish them the best. And certainly, we wish all our best to everybody out there in California doing a literal hell out there. So hopefully those fires will be out soon. All right. Very quickly, we just got a couple minutes here. All right. We often talk about who's going to win a game. I don't care about that. Everybody's predicting who'll win it. I want to know who you're for. So you got Ohio State, you got Notre Dame, two blue bloods, and if you're in the South, you're like, I'm not pulling for the Yankees. I know that's you. That's the way you talk when we're off air. I say, boy. So my question, who are you pulling for, Ohio State or Notre Dame?
Me first?
Yeah.
Notre Dame. Without question, Notre Dame. Because just can't stand Ohio State.
I didn't know you don't like Notre Dame either, though, do you?
No. But, it's
Not
like,
as
who
much
do you
as-
hate more? You got Hitler, you got Stalin. Yeah, you hate them both.
Which one
Okay,
is
so
that?
I'm
Because
gonna
Ohio
go
State
with
just is that
Notre
because
Dame.
Ohio State just beat Tennessee, or
No,
Yeah.
I think I like Notre Dame's pretty helmet.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Gold Dome.
Don't like anything about Ohio
But
State.
I love Ohio State's uniform.
And
shouldn't
why do they
SEC
put
fans
little
pull?
marijuana leaves all over the helmets? I don't understand
It's a northern
that.
thing. It's a northern.
SEC fans should pull for Ohio State though, because this is it isn't what it was our entire lives where SEC versus Big Ten rivalry, they are your partner now. And also Notre Dame did the thing, if you're an SEC or a Big Ten school, you don't want that. They scheduled nobody. They got Georgia without Carson Beck. Drew Aller can't hit the broadside of a barn. They've earned getting here, but they scheduled way down by Notre Dame standards this year
So you're
to
pull for
get into the playoff.
So pull for the power conference team.
Pull for
you're saying.
pull for your business partner in Ohio State.
Isn't there a part of you that wants the team that beats you to win it all?
Never.
That is the
Never.
opposite of this guy.
Never.
I found myself pulling for Notre Dame against Penn State because I didn't want it to be an all Big Ten national championship game. And I think Ohio State's going to win, but I'm going to be for Notre Dame again. I really like
we got
Marcus Freeman.
two Notre Dames and Ohio State. Who are you for?
Yeah, I think Ohio State, if you're a Tennessee fan too, I think you should probably want Ohio State to win because I think it's more you want the status quo. Ohio State, they're not going anywhere. They've been a power for years. Notre Dame gets up there and establishes itself as a power.
Yeah.
It's another team Tennessee's got to deal with at the top of the echelon.
And plus, they get all that money as an independent. They get to keep it.
Yeah, all
They're
20 million.
ranking it in.
I don't want that.
Y'all got a lot of layers. I just hate Ohio State.
I lived in Columbus. Go Irish. I loved Columbus. I love the traditions. Those are the best uniforms. I love those red and silver uniforms, scarlet and gray. But I am not pulling for those fans. They gave us so much grief on the website, on the YouTube, after UT lost to them. So, no, I'm for Notre Dame. Not to mention, it's Ryan's thing. Notre Dame hasn't won a championship since '88.
Yeah.
They've never been dominant in my lifetime. I'm not worried about them. Thanks to all these guys. Thanks to Josh Ward. Thanks to Mark Pancratz. Thanks to you. Thanks to the sponsors. Go take care of the Stamos family. Have a good week.